A European king who never set foot in Africa killed millions of people for profit. This is the story they don't teach in schools. The genocide in the Congo Free State under King Leopold II. In the late 19th century, while Europe was scrambling to carve up Africa, one man managed to secure an entire country as his personal property. King Leopold II of Belgium convinced the world he was on a humanitarian mission to bring civilization and Christianity to Central Africa. In reality, he created one of the most brutal forced labor regimes in history. The Congo Free State wasn't ruled by Belgium. It was ruled directly by Leopold himself. He used fake charities and diplomatic trickery to get approval from European powers at the Berlin Conference in 1885. On paper, he was abolishing the slave trade. In practice, he replaced it with something just as monstrous. What did Leopold want? Rubber. The industrial world was hungry for rubber to make tires, hoses, and machine belts. In the Congo's dense forests, wild rubber vines grew everywhere. Leopold turned this into an endless supply line. But harvesting rubber wasn't easy or safe. It required trekking deep into jungles, cutting vines, collecting latex, and processing it, all by hand. To maximize profit, Leopold's regime forced the Congolese to work without pay. Villages were given impossible quotas. If they failed, they were punished with shocking cruelty. Soldiers of the Force Publique, a brutal mercenary army of African conscripts led by European officers, burned villages, took hostages, whipped people with hippopotamus hide lashes that could flay skin to the bone. One of the most horrific symbols of Leopold's rule was the severed hand. Soldiers were issued limited bullets to save costs. They had to prove each bullet was used to kill someone, so they brought back the severed right hands of their victims as proof. Hands of men, women, even children. Entire baskets of severed hands were collected and counted. Sometimes soldiers cut off living people's hands to make up for wasted bullets, or to terrorize families into working harder. This wasn't random brutality, it was policy. Terror was used systematically to extract labor. People fled into the jungle to escape, but they were hunted down. Villages that resisted were wiped out. Children were held hostage to ensure adults worked. Missionaries reported seeing people with missing limbs everywhere. The toll was staggering. Historians estimate 10 to 15 million people died as a direct result of Leopold's system. That's half the population of the entire region at the time. Millions died from execution, starvation, disease, and exhaustion. And for what? Leopold grew unimaginably rich. He built lavish monuments and palaces in Belgium. He funded grand public works in Brussels, all financed by forced labor, by blood and rubber. He never once set foot in the Congo he owned. At first, Europe turned a blind eye. The Congo was too far away. Reports of atrocities were easy to dismiss as exaggerations, but eventually, the truth became impossible to hide. Whistleblowers like E.D. Morel missionaries and former officials began leaking shocking testimonies and photographs. One iconic image showed a father staring at the severed hand and foot of his young daughter, punished because he didn't meet his rubber quota. International outrage finally boiled over. Authors like Mark Twain and Arthur Conan Doyle condemned Leopold's rule. Joseph Conrad's novel Heart of Darkness was inspired by what he witnessed traveling up the Congo River, a descent into a hell of human cruelty in the name of civilization. In 1908, faced with mounting pressure and scandal, the Belgian government took the Congo away from Leopold. But it was too late. By then, an entire generation had been decimated. The country was left traumatized and exploited. Even Belgian colonial rule after 1908 continued forms of forced labor, though with less overt slaughter. Yet despite all this, Leopold II was celebrated for decades in Belgium. Statues of him stood proudly in city squares. Streets were named in his honor. For many Belgians, he was the king who built modern Brussels, a national hero. The human cost in Africa was conveniently forgotten. Today, few people learn about the Congo Free State genocide. It isn't taught in most European history classes. There are no solemn memorials in Brussels for the millions who died. It remains one of the most successful cover-ups in colonial history. But the ghosts of that past are still there. Congo's ongoing instability, its cycles of exploitation, its resource curses, all have roots in Leopold's private empire of death. It's a story that demands to be told, not just for history's sake, but because its legacy still shapes our world today. If you didn't know this before, you're not alone. But now you do. And history, once remembered, can no longer be denied. Subscribe for more dark history facts. Buy me a cup of coffee to support my work.